Really appreciate the conversation. Here to learn from some really incredible people leaders. As you know, I've been building an AI solution, an AI coaching tool in this space and market for a couple of years now, called Pinnacle. We're really in the thick of fundamentally redefining how AI can fuel performance and development on your teams. Before launching Pinnacle, I worked with growth stage technology founders and C-suites as their executive coach. And that's what led me to start this company. Now we work with enterprise CHROs, with them and their organizations as both our customers and thought partners. We have been running a series of private roundtables with senior-most people, executives, and growth stage tech companies and Fortune 500 companies, including the leaders on this panel. And these are the voices we wanted to surface today to showcase some of the incredible stuff that they're doing. So Helen, who is now labeled as Helen, is the CHRO of HubSpot, which, as you all know, is an incredible market-leading CRM. They have over 8,000 employees. They're one of our customers. Nearly 90% of their employees use AI regularly. 84% feel comfortable, which is remarkable at this stage. Brandon is a longtime friend and CHRO of Zapier, which is an automation and AI orchestration platform that you should definitely be using if you're not already. We use it all the time internally. It's great. He's been on a phenomenal journey since Zapier's CEO declared a code red back in 2023, and now has 97% of employees using AI daily. That's a dream for a lot of folks on this call. Victor is the VP of Learning, Design, and Development at Marriott, with a particularly unique sort of perspective and set of challenges here. He's got over 900,000 associates all around the world and is responsible for getting them all ready for the future that is emerging. So we have perspectives across all sort of sizes and stages, and really some forward-thinking leaders here. So I want to dive right in. The obvious thing is that AI is redefining our workforces, our work. The non-obvious thing is how. And so it seems like there are three possible futures here, depending on what you believe about AI's capabilities. On the one hand, if you think that AI's growth is asymptotic, or sort of maxing out on what AI can do, you're probably thinking AI is just an enabler of teams. We want to make sure everyone's using it, but like it's not going to dramatically change things that much. On the other side, if you think AI's potential is unlimited, that means you're going to get AI employees joining the org chart and joining the workforce, and being teammates. This is Mark Benioff saying, "I'm the last CEO to manage. I'm the last CEO at Salesforce to manage only humans." And you know, there's a future where we're somewhere in the middle. And so to the three of you, Helen, Brandon, and Victor, how are you each thinking about and preparing for, you know, these possible futures? What do you think is going to happen? And like, let's start high level. How are you envisioning and preparing your workforces for the sort of uncertainty of these possible futures?
Alexei, Helen, Victor, it's so good to be with you. I've learned a lot from you, Helen, over the years. Victor, the work that you're doing sounds incredible. I'll lead us off and then y'all can make the idea better. So by virtue of vantage point, so Zapier, like Alexei shared, is like right in the middle of the, you know, AI and automation scrum, as it were, but has been helping folks build workflows, automations in particular, for almost 15 years now. And really the big idea has always been how to enable folks who don't know how to code, who aren't in IT, aren't engineers, to have this particular builder superpower. And then, of course, over the last 3 years or so, we've all seen AI is helping us all take a big step forward in making that real. So that part feels consistent, right? This notion, this like access and opportunity that comes with AI for folks to have more control over how they design their workflow, and then increasingly just choice over what parts of that remain distinctively human-driven and what parts of that are done with technology. I don't think that paradigm's new, though, by the way. And this may be one of the things like you might hear from me over and over again today, is that AI as a technology still feels very new and can be disorienting. But this notion of like figuring out how humans and technology work together to help teams and companies be successful, that's not a new paradigm. And so I think we can apply some of our learnings from prior tech transformations to what we're all navigating right now.
Just picking up on that, thank you, Brandon, for kicking us off. we started by redefining hybrid work because I think we already have leaned into the fact that hybrid doesn't mean where you work anymore in the context of how we're thinking about it. It means who you work with. And so if you redefine hybrid as humans and agents, then we've obviously made a statement that says that's what we believe to be true. And then it's a case of making sure that we can equip our employees to be prepared to thrive in that context. And that starts with making them feel really comfortable and not threatened by adoption and making any barriers to adoption fall away. So it's highly encouraged. And then start to build them on this journey from learning AI, using AI, leading with AI, transforming with AI. And even using that framework for how we're classifying people when we're interviewing them, but also then how we're pushing them on that development journey. But I think we've made a statement that says we believe the future is both, and that will be a hybrid in our context.
Yeah, I think the learning space particularly is ripe for change when it comes to AI, right? And Alexia, I think of it in the same way as you. I look at the way I have this in my mind, this maturity level when it comes to AI. So maturity level one would be where we are today, and largely a lot of the promises aren't realized. And let's say at the other end of the spectrum, they absolutely are. We have agentic AI and beyond, and that's part of my org chart, right? So I think the question for us, though, as practitioners, is how do we operationalize this idea of AI and how do we plan for the future? Which I think is the lead up to the question is, what do we do with all of this? So we know that we want to have great adoption. We know that we want to have our associates tuned in and ready for whatever change might happen. But how do we plan for that today? And so for us here at Marriott, for me particularly within my COE, we're looking at it through the lens of, okay, if AI allows us to do the following, let's plan here, but let's also think about what the future would look like if I have AI agents reporting to AI agents within my org. So then the skill set of the associate starts to change. And then I start thinking about how does that inform the entire development process of the associates that are currently here, as well as the profile of the associates that I want to hire tomorrow, because it does start to change quite a bit. I need more strategy, perhaps, than I ever had before. We're always going to have a human in the loop, but what does that look like? It is a complex question to answer. So if you're on the call and you're asking yourself, how do I go about this work? I'm here to tell you, at the world's largest hospitality organization, we're thinking through that as well. But I think the key here is we need to recognize that where we are today won't be where we are tomorrow, and we need to plan for the nuances in tech. Tech sometimes has promise that isn't realized in the time, in the scope or timeline that we think would be. So that's all part of the more complex nuance of planning for this type of work.
Let's get people some answers. There was that July MIT study that documented that 95% of AI pilots fail. Change management and learning from past digital transformations, as you're pointing out, Brandon, seems to be the thing that we should focus on. And all three of you have taken major strides to really drive adoption and help and implement effectively. So I want to ask, where and how are you investing in enablement, education, reskilling? What are you doing practically that folks can learn from?
I would start us off with like anchoring our building in the company's existing mission, strategy, and goals. This is like another place where, no organization is starting from scratch in that sense. AI is a technology, right? It's not a outcome in and of itself. Really the question is how might AI help us take a big step forward within the things that our company already cares about, including our existing goals. And so that's where we've really started is, like really sitting down with folks who are closest to, specific KPIs or outcomes within the company, saying, hey, like, what's your perspective on this as it relates to quota carrying capacity of a sales rep, as it relates to average ticket handle time for a customer ticket, as it relates to CSAT, as it relates to recruiter throughput, and so on and so on and so on. What do you think the opportunity is? What are you skeptical of? In really involving the folks who are closest to the work from the get-go. Like most of anything good that's happened at Zapier in this area from a like moving the needle perspective has come from the folks who are closest to the work. But it starts with this paradigm, right? Like AI is a medium, it's not an outcome unto itself. We do want to be experimenting, but not for the sake of experimenting. We want to be experimenting within opportunities that are already like right at the center of what we're trying to do as a company, which also really helps with prioritization as well, rather than the sensation that we're being asked to be on like a goose chase of sorts and building for the sake of building. So for us, like that's been a helpful starting point.
Yeah, I mean, the HubSpot as a product is really pushing thought leadership around AI. So let's just start with the fact that to be credible as HR practitioners in these technical environments, we better get our shit together when it comes to AI, the technical term there. Sorry for the. So I would say that the starting point was we have to build trust as a function with our leaders and our senior folks that we get what needs to be done. And so that's the starting point. And so what we did was we sort of sort of turned the approach upside down a little bit and said, let's look at the employee life cycle, which, people are suddenly start to yawn when you say the employee life cycle. But if you just bear with me for a second and you say, if we look at every single moment that matters along that employee life cycle and we AIify whatever that particular moment is, we can make sure that as an employee at HubSpot, you're experiencing AI at all of these critical moments that matter. So whether that's embedding it within the interview process, within an hour of your day one onboarding, we're giving you use cases, we're breaking you into teams, and we're having you think about it. When you sit down and have your quarterly check-in, you're being asked for examples of use cases that you can bring to that conversation to talk about what gains did you get. Whether you're ready for promotion, part of the promotion toolkit is to say, here are use cases that this individual is using. When you're having coaching conversations, obviously, Alexia, we're pulling in your product to say, here is how a sort of non-threatening tool can help give you feedback without you having to do that too close to the sun and awareness and visibility of your manager. So start by weaving it through all of those moments, and it becomes this very organic way for your employees to start to embrace it. And you take the threat away because you talk about productivity gains as opposed to how do I replace your job. And so I think just very practical application has really driven up adoption. And also, it's not removed fear altogether, because we still know the conversations that people are having at home are very different about AI than the conversations they're having in the workplace. But it's certainly taken the sort of shoulders down and the fear levels down.
I love that kind of weaving it all together. I'll add to that one of the things that I see, particularly on my team, that drives even more adoption is including it in part of leadership decision making and having it part of this enterprise mindset. We have this cute little name for it. We call it killing zombies, and those are processes, things that we do that we really shouldn't be doing anymore for a whole host of reasons. So that existed before, let's say, this push for AI, but what we've done is incorporated the idea that AI could likely remove these different tasks or things that we shouldn't be doing, or inform a better way of doing those things, better practice. So we are slaying away our zombies and trying to figure out how we can enhance work. And I think that when you start to show the associates what that really does look like in their life, as well as hold leadership accountable for having this analysis process and understanding how we can incorporate AI into our existing business processes, just change the way we think about things, it really does bring it to life and complete that kind of that circle of thinking. That I love the idea of including it, Helen, in their life cycle, and I think this adds a little bit more to it from my perspective.
One of the things that I'm hearing there mirrors other comments that I've heard is that HR leaders need to become product managers, really thinking problem first, looking at the whole life cycle of the journey and identifying the places where the greatest use cases are and implementing new products and solutions here. I want to dive one step deeper and more practical. Victor, you and I have talked about this insight that you can't use old technology to teach new technology. We're in a new paradigm, right? Play is really important. Brandon, Helen, you both rely heavily on hackathons. Helen, your Monday minute of people sharing use cases with each other to drive that social proof, to get people excited, inspired to use it. All of these are really important examples. And I'd love to maybe invite you to speak specifically towards, hey, what hacks have you found? What things have you done that really unlock people's excitement about moving into this transition, excitement about leaning into these new tools?
One thing I'll share, because it's not usually I could answer all the usual things, but I want to just share a use case because it's not where you would typically go and invest your time necessarily. But we did a bit of research, and what we found was that when we introduced AI to those people that were underperforming, that we saw an outsized gain in their performance relative to those that were already performing, because obviously the gap was greater. And so for us, I think there's a huge opportunity here to think about how do you get all boats to rise by looking at those folks that, for whatever reason, are struggling. But you double down on equipping them and their AI with AI use cases and opportunities for them to really close the performance gap. So not necessarily answering your question, Alexei, but I think it was a finding that we were very surprised to find. And so I would say that, but the excitement, I think the Monday Minute was just again, it was like, what about, should we just try this? You know, we thought we were very cute because we spelled Monday with an AI at the end versus AY. And it was like, God, we're so creative over here. But it actually just grew so many arms and legs because as soon as somebody shared, and it had to be, that was the other thing. We have a TikTok generation. Don't give me anything that's longer than a minute because I will have already zoned out and flicked on to the next thing. So the idea was give it me in less than a minute, make it super consumable and practical. And actually people are really competitive and they like community. So as soon as somebody posted something, there was this proliferation of examples that the others wanted to also showcase. So for the price of one effort, you got like 20 different examples. And so that was probably the thing that really got us out of the gate. And we did it, you know, not only at a company level, but at a functional level. So you were really tracking things that would give you lift within your domain expertise too.
Yeah.
I love that.
I'll add to that you've heard me speak to this before. I think one of the things that I struggle with as a learning specialist is that our first response is to put people through digital learning, and we're using old tech to train new tech. Don't make me log into an LMS or an LXP to then go into something else, and just give me the opportunity to play. So what I've been advocating for a while is, particular here at our company, is to create experiences that allow the associates to learn and then immediately apply what is it they learn in the tool. Get them closer to the tool, learn in the tool. AI is not scary. It's not scary if you practice and play in it. So my recommendation, anytime anyone is willing to hear, my recommendation is don't put them through self-paced digital learning as your only solution to learn AI. I know that in EMEA, particularly in Europe, we have to do that. We have regulations we have to comply with, and so let's do that. But let's give the opportunity for the associates to play and to experience that right away as quickly as they can, and so they can start demystifying this idea of how complex AI truly really is, particularly if there are already tools that are embedded in the way they do work already. So Copilot, for example, if you have an enterprise Copilot license, get them playing, give them challenges, do hackathons as was mentioned before. That's my recommendation, something I'm very passionate about.
Building on some things we just heard from Victor, Helen, there are really two things that stood out to me. The first is I'm hearing, like cultivate intrinsic motivation where you can, right? We all, every single person in our organizations, like all three of us included, probably you too, Alexi, like have parts of our jobs that suck. They are not good. They are a waste of time. They're a waste of energy, and they can be better. So I would imagine, Helen, when y'all are doing, hackathons and what have you, you're inviting folks to bring to the table something within their daily work that they want to level up with AI and automation. And then in doing so, you've got this built-in like intrinsic motivator where they're like, yeah, like I want to solve this problem. Help me solve this problem. Like make this job better. Help me be better at the thing I'm accountable for. So I love that. And then the second is, a lot of thoughtfulness I'm hearing around like who's holding the microphone, who's facilitating a builder session, who's sharing the example. And, at Zapier, for example, as it's become clear to us over the last couple of years, who our most skillful AI builders and teachers are, they're in unexpected places. As we identify who they are, we're actually starting to change their job descriptions and goal them on very specific ways that they can level up their peers. Which, by the way, for the folks who are now kind of tapped to do that, you talk to them and like, it's incredibly motivating for me to know that like I am helping us together, right? Like grow and rise and like change the way that we're working for the better. And then of course, on top of that, I think those are really approachable teachers rather than like our centralized L&D team or their manager's manager, for example.
A thread that I'm picking up on is it matters a lot to put people in the right spot to create a culture where this is valued, where we can play, where people are sharing those use cases that is psychologically safe. We know this isn't true everywhere, right? So there was a Workday survey in September that said that 44% of employee comments about AI were negative. So we know that some folks are scared. You all, I think, have done a really good job of creating an environment that works for people, that allows people to be at the forefront of their own transformation and step into these roles, Brandon. I'm curious how you've built that.
Well, a couple of things. One is normalizing the trepidation, particularly around job security. And the way that we do that at Zapier may seem unconventional or even provocative, and I'll just explain how we talk about it. First of all, we want folks to ask questions about anything that's related to their engagement, their job satisfaction, sense of psychological safety. And so naturally, folks will ask their leaders, like, what do you think? I even on my own people team, take recruiters. Hey, how many recruiters do you think we're going to need in 2 years, Brandon? Hey, how do you think my job's going to change in 6 months? Et cetera. And on the job security questions in particular, one thing we remind ourselves as a team is we have never had perfect answers to those questions, including way before generative AI. If you would have asked me 5 years ago the same question, I would have had the same beginning of the answer, which is that super important question. I 100% understand why that might be top of mind, and I don't have an answer to the question. Right. I can talk very openly looking at like our recruiter capacity model. we can flip through the variables that influence how many recruiters we think we're going to need, for example. But even me included, I can't plug in those variables at 24, 36 months from now and tell even myself with certainty the answer to that question. That's the first part of the answer. It's not satisfying, but it's real talk. The second part of the answer, which I think is more satisfying and seems to be landing pretty darn well, is, hey, but I appreciate that part of the reason we're talking about this right now is because of AI. And so what our team can answer to, and what you will see us demonstrate with our deeds, not just our words, is that we want to show that Zapier is the best place that you could possibly be possibly learning the future of this work, the future of recruiting, in this case, using more AI and automation. We will lead the way, and you will have those skills, period. What that means for how many recruiters in the future, like I don't know, right? We know what the variables are. We know what the math is. We don't know how the math plays out. But if you go to another company, they're going to give you the same answer, hopefully, if they're being direct and honest. And so really the question that's really worth anchoring on is, am I working at a company that is preparing me for the future of the work that I do?
Yeah, I would just say +1. I always have this thing where it's like contribute, don't comment. Everything he said.
Yeah, I agree as well. I do think that setting an understanding for associates that you can either be part of the change or you could be affected by the change in ways that you can't control is something that's really meaningful and really lands. I do have associates that are really kind of terrified of what this looks like and whether or not our function will look the same. The only thing I can guarantee is that our function will look the same, will look different. It won't look the same that it is today, but we are not, this isn't happening to us. We are part of the process. So once you start thinking that way and you change your mindset and you say, okay, what can I do to contribute to how our function is changing and what part of it will I play? Then your mindset starts to change a little bit. And it goes from being fearful of something happening to you and being in control of something that you would like to do, a pathway you would like to follow. And that's where I focus a lot of energy with my associates, particularly on my team specifically, is changing that mindset and getting that. I think once they bite and once they start feeling that control and they really get attracted to the idea that, wow, I actually do have a role in this and I'm part of it. It's not happening to me.
There's one thread that I want to pull on a little bit harder here, which is, Helen, at the top of this call, you mentioned how you're resetting performance expectations or asking people to use AI as part of their performance review process and making that part of their core skills that they need to be good at in order to score high. Brandon, I know you do the same at Zapier. And I know that we're also talking about looking for some of this as we hire. Before we get into the gate, how are we assessing AI capabilities? And so I'd love to hear some more examples too of what that change process has been like, and how is it to set that up, to create that expectation that people are using it, hopefully in the empowering way that Victor is talking about it, as opposed to the disempowering way of like, you're going to lose your job if you don't do this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've tried to, from a careers site standpoint, obviously it's one thing to say we need you to be AI fluent to come and have a job and then not actually give them any pointers as to what that needs to look like. And so we have put some materials on our site that at least helps people do a little bit of homework, if you will, before they start talking to us. So it actually gives them a sense of, oh, okay, not only are this company looking for me to develop my AI skills, but they're also prepared to invest in me before I've even started the process. And this is a really good sign, to Brandon's earlier point, that this is a company that's going to invest in my growth and is going to be here to future-proof me. So that would be one thing I think is really important, and that's really part of your value proposition. And then the performance conversations, again, obviously it's going to look different at different altitudes within the organization as to around expectations. But we're expecting our top of the house to be as into it and as fluent and Yamini, our CEO, is the perfect role model for this. I mean, we do this, we call it a Friday wrap. And she did what we do this each week, and it's just what's top of mind at a company level, and it's about 5-6 minutes. And she did a wrap that was just so popular because she did it based on, these are the podcasts I'm reading, these are the things I'm playing around. She basically just gave you a sense of all the things I'm doing every morning in my test and learn journey that hopefully will give you all some hints. So when you're sitting and seeing that your CEO just like, she's sort of, I mean, she is like super overachiever, so she makes you feel inadequate every time you talk to her anyway. But it does put the pressure on, like, wow, I have got to stay on this. And so it just flows very easily from the top. So that when you're sitting with your team at a quarterly conversation and you're saying, okay, show me some examples. what productivity gains did you get? What did you do with the time that you got back now that you managed to make this transition? And so just having it feel very energizing, as opposed to fearful, but not pretending for a second that that fear doesn't exist. And I think that's where we've probably made most grounds, is the mindset, and also helping managers realize that there needs to be a more humanistic approach that you're bringing to these conversations now than ever before. We've got our top 350 leaders together next week and kicking it off, and we're talking about what the shift in leadership requirements are going to be in this age. And, you know, this getting closer to the work, being incredibly humanistic. We've tried to sort of pull apart what are tomorrow's leadership skills and what are the things that are today's that you have to actually unlearn to survive in this environment. And so putting a lot of emphasis on the leadership attributes too, will be the next couple of months' work, because it's going to have to come top down.
Resonates, Helen. There's a principle that we've been applying to a lot of like our AI transformation, which is to integrate, for example, on at the expectations layer, to integrate anything that's fresh into as many of our existing frameworks and norms as we possibly can. And there are really two reasons we do that. One is design simplicity, and the second is to help moderate change fatigue. Right. So there's a lot of stuff we're asking folks to learn and try and experiment with. Like, if we don't absolutely need to create a brand new framework or a brand new set of principles, then we're not going to do that. We're going to integrate the couple of things that aren't already explicitly accounted for into an existing framework. And so when it comes to performance expectations, for example, we have a framework we've had for years. We call them impact behaviors. Impact behaviors. And they really boil down into three core expectations. One is effectively like, are you doing the right work? The second is, how well are you doing the work? And the third is, in doing all of that, like, how are you kind of like elevating standards in your peers in the organization? And there's some specific behaviors within each of those three pillars. And so when it comes to, you know, what we are increasingly expecting of folks with AI, we're embedding some of those in the existing behaviors as like applications or examples thereof, not entirely new ideas. And by the way, it wasn't forced. If we found that we needed a couple new behaviors or ideas, brand new ones, in order to really like make sure we were rowing in the right direction and folks were exhibiting what was needed to be successful, we would have added new ideas. But as it turned out, right, again, this gets back to the idea that like AI is a technology, it is a mean towards ends, right? The things that the behaviors, the mindsets, the practices that are important for folks' success, we found to be actually very durable, in part because we wrote these behaviors in a way that wasn't particularly anchored on hard skills necessarily, if that makes sense. So that's something that's maybe specific to our impact behaviors, which enabled that framework to still be useful, you know, moving forward.
So thank you. This is super helpful. Love the designing for simplicity. Love the start at the top and setting an example across the whole company. I want to pivot this and take it in a different direction, and I want to open up for questions in about 5, and I want to make sure to cover this, because one of the biggest questions I hear talking with a lot of CHROs or senior people leaders is, great, we're getting all this pressure either from ourselves or from the board to implement AI, but it's a means, not an end. We want to actually solve real business problems. The space is so noisy, it's frothy, it's moving so quickly. Where do we start? All of you are, you know, decently far on your journey. I'm wondering if you can share some insights to folks that are a little bit at that early stage. We're intimidated by the fact that you can, you know, put AI into onboarding, candidate communication, I guess start the other way, candidate communications, onboarding, performance management processes, AI coaching, the whole ticket management for the HR team, everything and anything. What are the highest value use cases? Where do you begin? Go.
So you're like, stop being smug over there and give us some very practical examples.
I want some
No, I get
like...
it. I get it. I think start with well, first of all, it's going to be, context is everything, right? So what is the most important stage that you're at? So if you are a small company and it's all about growth, and when I mean growth, I mean it's like getting enough people in the door as quickly as possible. I think back to my time at Rivian, like grow fast, go like if we all just sprinted at it. In that scenario, you want to put your AI technology in your biggest business challenge, which is around growth. So how do you leverage from a recruiting perspective tools and AI to accelerate your growth path and also take out some of the noise and work that the team is required to be able to do that? And again, I'm talking as if you're a head of HR or within the HR realm. So that would be context there. If your biggest issue is development, how do I grow my people that are already in the building? Then invest in tools that can help with some of that. And when I say tools, I mean, again, Alexa, the coaching opportunity that we've got with Pascal, these tools are so cool because they're real pain points for where managers struggle. Like, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I give this feedback? Like, these are problems that a lot of people struggle with. How do you help take some of the anxiety away and equip them to be able to have meaningful conversations, growth conversations, and help the development of their people? Because again, you're going to scale the development of your people by elevating the capability of your manager quicker than you are rolling out a bunch of AI courses and saying, get on it, everybody. So I would say, what's the biggest problem you're trying to solve, and start there.
I'm going to be a bit controversial here, I think, and say avoid shit implementations, right? Helen opened the door earlier, so feel comfortable saying that, right? But avoid it. Yes, AI is everywhere. Yes, we need to expose our associates as much as we can to AI, but be mindful that a poor deployment of AI is going to be potentially detrimental to your adoption on property or at wherever you might be. So we take a much more conservative approach, maybe too conservative in some senses within my own COE, but that's because we want to make sure that the experience for the associate is exactly what we intended to. And so what we've heard in the past is, well, you promised that AI could create these wonderful PowerPoints for me. I just tried it and it doesn't. You told me that AI could parse out my data, and I put a spreadsheet, and in fact, it was incorrect, and it just wasn't what I expected. And so these different experiences are really challenging for associates who are already a little bit kind of, I don't know, not concerned, maybe concerned, but just kind of skeptical about what it could do. So I try to make sure that we curate really positive experiences that we can control as much as we can, and then start expanding that way. And so particularly for those associates that do have concerns about it, it just kind of sets them up in this little space where it's safe and comfortable. And then I'm almost certain that their experience is going to be just as positive as I intended to do. Can you protect them from hallucination, AI hallucination? No. Can you protect them from all sorts of weird things that happen? No. But I think that's a part of it that we don't think about or talk about enough, is avoid crappy implementations.
Victor, there's a principle, AI building principle at Zapier that's so sticky for me. I find that, sometimes people ask, like, what kind of like rules or guardrails do you have? It's like, oh no, well, those are helpful too, but it's hard for them to like keep up with the pace of what the technology can do. So sometimes it's these like bigger ideas or principles which are the most durable, that really help folks apply good judgment, like you were saying, and avoid like shit implementations. That principle that I find so helpful is just this notion that with AI, you can delegate the work, you cannot delegate the accountability. Right. So humans still in the center of the whole thing at the end of the day. And then the last thing I actually just want to read what Helen put in the chat, because I think it's so darn on point. Fall in love with your biggest problem and not the hottest AI product, and work backwards to find the best solution to address it. Love that.
Amazing. Thank you to everyone here. I've been scanning the chat for some questions. I obviously have a million more that I can keep asking you, but I want to do some crowdsourcing here. And so one of the things that came up early was, how do you think about supporting your teammates who are at the associate level versus tooling up the high-end knowledge workers? How do you sort of balance, and maybe for the folks who don't have associate frontline workers, Brandon and Helen, One way to think about this is you do have folks who are a lot more junior, you have folks who are a lot more senior, high end. How do you think about the differences there? And obviously, Victor, there's a real question there as you think about the different populations that you have with different sets of needs.
I think Helen hit the nail on the head when it comes to our frontline associate population, and that's exposure. Ensuring that they see it, that we're, of course, we will say a lot about AI, but they need to experience it. And they see that we as an organization are dedicated to empowering them and also making their life a little bit easier by leveraging different technologies. I think, for example, our learning tool that we use, Exonify, which we branded as our digital learning zone, DLZ. There's quite a bit of AI there, and a bunch of different tools that our associates would work with. When it comes to those senior level associates, it's important that, and I think I spoke to this earlier, that we start looking at it through the lens of decision making and strategic thinking, and this idea of enterprise mindset. And so that's how we differentiate. The first level would be, okay, let's experience it. Let's make your life a little bit easier. Let's start using it, getting comfortable with it. But then for those decision makers is, okay, do you understand it enough to make really well-informed decisions about the business processes that we engage in today and how those can change? Talked about killing zombies earlier. That's kind of the idea behind that, is really setting them up for that type of work.
Playing on something we heard from Helen earlier too, our approach with you, we end up thinking less about like, frontline or entry level through senior. It's more around like where the problems are, and then like who's best equipped to inform the solution / who's going to be adopting the new ways of working. And if that pointed at, our like earlier career workforce in terms of the work to be done and the opportunity, then bam, like we're going to really focus there. If that pointed to, another portion of our workforce, then that's where we're going to. With one caveat, when it comes to some of these AI fluency builders and enablers, we talked about workshops, we talked about peer-to-peer Q&A and ask me anything, so I have you. We have a principle where like that has to be available to everyone. So that's a little bit of like at the grassroots, like those enablers should be totally accessible regardless of role, tenure, geography. When it comes to like the big swings we're taking as a company, we try to circle those very concretely, and then we involve whichever parts of the workforce are needed to make sure we have a good solve and can build it effectively.
I think just what's interesting is whilst we don't have associates in the same way you would think of Victor, what we do have is quite an interesting situation where we have people in customer service answering customer service questions who are seeing us with a product that is an AI answer to answering customer service questions. So imagine, you're like sitting in a company that basically is getting ready to displace you. And it's like, come on, everybody, like, let's adopt, let's go. So it's a really interesting needle to thread. And so what we've tried to do is to make the conversation very much about the types of skills and tasks that these roles are doing and need, and how transferable are those skills and tasks to other parts of the company. And so we did build an agent that basically says, okay, this is where you sit, this is the skills that you have, and these are the other pathways that would enable you to take those skills and transfer them to places over here where maybe they won't feel as under threat, or it just gives you a different way to think more laterally around how you can look at adjacent places for those skills to be leveraged. And so I think it's being really thoughtful and intentional around forget what that role encompasses, think about the skills and tasks of that role, and look at ways that you can show other paths within your org that individual could take. Is Alexei frozen?
I'm realizing first I thought we had stoic Alexei. Now I realize we may have frozen.
About ready to ask a question here. But I think he'll be joining us back in just a moment. I know, again, seeing some additional comments and questions coming in, also kudos and thank yous on the conversation so far. Just want to bring another question kind of here more specifically in the tactically, I heard mention of a couple of tools, obviously Pinnacle, Axonify, as tools that are working here. How are you evaluating what to automate, what to keep human, and what are some of those tools and products that you're deploying now to your organizations? And welcome back, Alexi.
I could kick us off here. And there really, I heard you ask two interrelated questions. One was around tools and the other was around like making decision around like who's doing the work.
Yes.
So I'll kind of briefly set out to answer each. On tools, there's a specific framework that I find really helpful for thinking about tooling. And it's really anchored on like using as much of what an organization already has first and keeping things as simple as possible for a given job to be done. And so the framework is really imagine it like a dartboard with 3 concentric circles. In the middle, when it comes to building with AI, I would consider like your foundational LLM that you have, whether you have Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT or multiple, whatever the case may be. It's like, depending on the job to be done, like I would start there, right? Companies have it, it's deployed, it's almost inevitably enterprise grade. So you've got all your security stuff set up. So if you can solve a problem or move a KPI using your foundational LLM, I would start there from a simplicity, security, point of view. In the second concentric circle, I would position what I would call builder platforms, right? These are things, this would be, again, classically Zapier, not the only one, but yes, things like Zapier, where you can build workflows. And by you, I mean anyone in your company without IT, without having to pull aside an engineer, folks that are closest to the work who really understand the customer, really understand what excellence looks like to give them these builder superpowers to solve a problem where an LLM by itself won't get the job done. And in the third concentric circle, I would consider like traditional software solutions who are building AI capabilities into their core products. And that's massively helpful as well. And that tends to be particularly useful when in areas where the solutions are fairly specialized or require, special, security parameters or things of that nature. And or, for teams that just want to kind of outsource the building to an established partner. And we encourage that too, honestly, to get the most of the vendors that we're already using. I didn't answer the second part of the question on human in the loop, but the TLDR is, at least at Zapier, as it relates to people in HR, humans make all the actual employment decisions. So we use AI to help humans make better, more informed decisions around who to hire, who to promote, which performance rating for this individual based on the evidence. So yes to AI as a helper for helping humans be better at making decisions, but not using AI to outsource the decision-making itself.
I think we're in a weird spot right now because AI is exploding. There are so many tools out there, and every tool has their own niche, and every provider is trying to stand out a little bit, right? And so in the landscape, particularly in learning design, becomes a bit muddled when it comes to do we use 11 Labs here? Do we use a Synthesia there, or do we use Articulate here, whatever it might be? And actually, I know a lot of my counterparts in the field feel this pain. Like, okay, what is the right platform? How do we select it? And then there's the aspect of we selected a platform that built an architecture around what AI or whatever the technology looked like a year ago. Is that architecture going to continue to change to allow them to continue to grow? And what we're seeing is that's not the trend. You will invest and you will pick a partner and kind of go that way. And all of a sudden you see others moving faster because their architecture was informed in different ways and built at a later point, maybe a bit more nimble. And so this other organization is struggling a little bit to keep up, right? It's a real big challenge for us, particularly in this space, because we rely so heavily on these tools, these AI tools for our development work. And I like the concentric circles. I think of it in the same way. We have AI embedded in the tools that we currently use. Think of Adobe and others. And then we have AI tools that are specific for something like voiceover. I think that at some point within the next couple of years, there will be a great consolidation. Call it the great consolidation of AI in 2027, whatever you might think. That these organizations are start to become less disparate and focus on specific things and a bit more combined, and that you're going to see more and more feature sets or that one organization does it better than others, and they have a lot more feature sets. So you don't have to go to this tool, that tool, that tool for that. I think it's really challenging right now to be in this space and just trying to figure out which one does best and trying to keep up with all the changes. So hopefully we do have a little bit of consolidation here in the future. And then human in the loop, yes. Absolutely, human in the loop, 100%.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks, Aaron, for stepping in when my internet gave way there for a minute. I want to exercise my prerogative here as moderator and bring us to a close. This has been a really fascinating conversation with a bunch of practical insights. How do we approach different tools we're using, or rather problems we want to solve, then back into tools? How do we think about the cultures that we want to create? How do we think about what the workforce itself looks like in the next few years? I really appreciate all these insights. We will share them afterwards. Aaron will share some more details about that in a minute. Just a few additional notes on our side. We're having a ton of these conversations across the spectrum. We have a recording coming up with Satu Salminen, who's the VP of HR Transformation at ZoomInfo. And very shortly, we actually are hosting 2 enterprise CHRO dinners in New York in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So if you want to come, let me know if you're in New York. We have another panel in the works, and we're continuing to support peer conversations and roundtables for CHROs and heads of learning and development, navigating this space fully independent of Pinnacle as a solution provider. It's more facilitated peer work. Let me know if you want to join. And last, because this is PeopleTech webinar, I'll remind folks that anyone who is a PeopleTech member gets free access to Pascal. Just shoot me a note. If you are not yet a PTPer and you want free access, shoot me a note anyway, and we can talk about it. We like the community here, and so we're willing to extend it outwards. Really, thanks ton, Brandon, Helen, Victor, for coming on and sharing some of these really hard-won insights. It's really helpful. Aaron, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you, Alexi. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Helen. This was an amazing conversation. We at PeopleTech Partners are looking forward to continuing to support the thought leadership and perspectives of HR and people leaders and the innovators who are supporting and solving their problems through the work that we do here at PeopleTech. Thank you to everyone who joined. We had a big group today, and it was wonderful to hear the questions and things that are coming. More to come from us and the network. I'm going to drop this here as operating partner. I get to bridge the gap between the founders and the innovators. And so anyone on the call, if you'd like to connect with me, dropping my LinkedIn here would be great to connect with you as well. And I see Alexi's email too. So more soon. I want to make sure we end on time and are respectful of everyone's day. Thank you so much, and appreciate all the insights. Bye-bye.
Bye.